This is the Happy Dev Podcast with me, James Brooks. This week, I'm speaking to Caleb Porzio. Hey man.
How's it going?
Caleb splits his time between freelancing and working on Livewire, a front-end framework for Laravel, and Alpine.js, a rugged and minimal framework for JavaScript. Caleb is also a speaker, blogger, and screencaster. Can you tell us a bit about yourself away from the computer?
Yeah, I could go away from the computer, but you wouldn't hear me. So I'll stay by the computer. Away from the computer, I do a lot of things. I bounce back and forth between a lot of things. I think I have that gene where you like go really hard into something and get obsessed with it, and then you just completely forget about it and are not interested at all. And then you rinse and repeat that over and over.
An itch that you have to scratch and then it stops itching.
Exactly. But I found that like over my lifetime, they come back, like I recycle them. So I thought that I was a really inconsistent person, but actually they come back into like the forefront of my attention. So I guess it smooths out the waves a little bit. But I guess some of those are, so fly fishing is the latest one, but it's really cold now. So that's been slowed down. But yeah, fly fishing, it's just kind of really hooked me. Another
fun.
So that's good. I really like programming. I know that's on the computer, but I like it even just for fun. It's just been a passion of mine forever. But a lot of outdoors things. I just started watching this show Alone. Well, I revisited this show. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's called Alone. It's like the only good game show. They basically send 10 people into the woods, and last man standing wins. And they can bring 10 items, and they record themselves. So they're totally alone in the woods, and they have to survive and eat food and live and whatever. Anyway, that stuff totally activates me. Like, I love camping. I love survival stuff. I love hiking and backpacking and hunting and fishing and canoeing and all the things.
What 10 items would you take with you?
What 10 items? Oh, definitely a tarp. That'd be number one. Like a nice big tarp. They all do that now. The first season, they got creative with the items. And then some people just tapped out after day 2. So now there's some basics and like a good knife, a tarp, a fire starter. I don't know if I'd bring it, like definitely fishing line. That's like the most important thing. One of the most important things. You can do a lot with that. That's probably what I'd bring. Maybe a guitar, if I could fit it.
Let's start by talking about your experiences with mental health. When did they start, and how do they manifest for you in particular?
Yeah, so they go way back. Me and mental health go way back. I guess the first big run-in was... I guess I don't actually have a specific point in time, but when I was a kid, I was really afraid of vomiting, people vomiting, hearing vomit, my whole life, to a really strong degree, like to the point where it stops you from doing lots of things. Like, I'd fear sleepovers. I remember like fearing summer camp and really being pressured to go and never like telling anybody why. And having to like make up excuses, feared like theme parks, flying. The first time I flew was terrifying because of that, like not because of, like dying in the air.
The thing that can't hurt you. Yeah.
I know, the thing that nobody cares about, was like, well, what if I get sick? Or what if, somebody, they have just seeing the barf bags on the plane just was like, depressing to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, but when you grow up with something like that, you don't really acknowledge that it's very different from anyone else until you get older, and then you realize that like, oh, this is a kind of controlling life thing that nobody else seems to have. And you keep it to yourself. It's something I still don't really talk about that much. You keep it to yourself because if it's, I always remember hearing people say like, "Oh, I'm deathly afraid of spiders." They'd be like, or I'm terrified of heights." And I'd be like, yeah, like you don't get it. Like if you were really afraid of spiders in the way that I'm afraid of vomit, you wouldn't tell anyone because then they would have control over you.
Yeah.
then they would either tease you about it, or they would, the worst case would be they would, show a spider to you or throw a spider at you. So,
whereas, in your case, it could be to throw vomit at you, I guess.
Exactly. Just
it could happen, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Of all the things they could do, that would be the least terrifying, would be vomit being thrown at me. I'll take that one over all the others. But so, yeah, I guess it's something I always lived with. And then when I actually started working at Titan, a coworker messaged me privately in the Slack channel and said, "Hey, do you have a life-crippling fear of vomit?"
Wow, they're observant.
I know. And I just stopped dead in my tracks, and I immediately replied, "Why, yes." Do you? And this person said, "Yeah." And so immediately we became best friends, and yeah.
Bonding over vomit.
Yep. And it's all, you can tell, like, I'm trying to think of a good parallel, but it's like a secret code, because you live a certain way in all these really subtle ways that have, like, these neurological grooves that have developed through your whole life, and little weird things. You can just pick it out in someone else, and he picked it out of me. And I remember asking him, and I don't remember the exact reasons, but it was subtle stuff. But then I'm like, "Hey, do you fear this?" "Oh yeah." "Hey, did you avoid this growing up?" "Oh yeah." "Hey, you're probably scared of this now." "Yep." So it was nice to meet another person, and he was farther along. He's like, "Oh man, you got to check out the subreddit. Like, there, unfortunately, it's not that well researched. I guess like some ridiculous percentage of the population has it. Some surprising percentage, and yeah, but there's no real cure. Exposure therapy helps, but who wants to sit there and watch people vomit or induce vomiting themselves?"
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, is it just other people's vomit, yours, or
it's everything?
Or just everything.
It's everything.
How do you deal with being sick then? Is it you're sick, somebody else is sick, or all sick?
It's all sick. Definitely my sick. And it's surprising, like, the people who have this condition don't vomit that often.
Okay.
Because it's,
is that where it stems from then, do you think?
What's that? Oh, no, you know what? Possibly. But I vomited, like, I think the average amount as a kid. Like, I had the flu. Yeah. And those were, like, so depressing to me. It was just so depressing. Sickness in any way has always been really depressing to me. So I guess what I was going to say is I have someone with this condition, but I'll just say me, has like a conditional general anxiety disorder. That's what they actually categorize it as now, is that they just kind of lump it in general anxiety. But really it's a specific anxiety, because I'm not really an anxious person about other things in my life. But this one thing I am. So I have all the symptoms of somebody with general anxiety disorder, depression, things like that. But just in this narrow thing, it happens to manifest itself in all sorts of ways. But yeah, so if I'm sick, that is extremely depressing. But it's interesting. The most mentally free I ever have been in my entire life, unshackled, is after I vomited, because you're not scared of it. It's like after it happens, you're like, oh, the worst thing that could possibly happen to you just happened, and I lived. So
yeah. But then that doesn't kind of repeat going onwards then, does it? You have to re-experience it again.
Yeah, it wears over time. Yeah. Being exposed to vomit in my life has helped me. If anybody listening to this, I just want to make it clear, if anybody like if I go to Laracon and somebody vomits in front of me on purpose, it's over, man. It is over.
I will personally throw them out for you, because that's just not socially acceptable anyway.
Yeah, fortunately, honestly, these are the weird things that I think about. It's like, I'm so grateful that generally people hate vomiting just because it sucks.
Yeah.
So it's not something that one, is very odd to not want to be around, and two, it doesn't happen all that often. But the thing that I was telling you before, like, I think I imagine some of this has to do. So my brother, I said, is like a careless vomiter. he
Earlier you described him as a reckless
vomiter. He's the opposite of me in so many ways. He just doesn't, like, I'm an anxious person. I don't know. Everything just rolls off his back. He's so chill. He doesn't fear anything. And growing up, I have this, one of my earliest memories, we had bunk beds and I was on the bottom bunk, and the bottom bunk is wider than the top bunk. And I remember opening my eyes and seeing a pile of vomit in front of my face. I was like really young. And I don't know if that started it, but I definitely remember that. And then there's like anytime, like my dad, he's a food broker. And so he's been in the food industry, and they have food shows. I don't know if you've ever heard of food shows.
I've never been to one, but yeah.
Okay. So we used to go to these things all the time because it's like where at like Laracon, you get free stickers from booths, you get food, and you just like load up bags and bags of food. And every time he would throw up. Every time.
I mean, I think we can see where this has come from, can't we?
Yeah. So that's probably has something to do with it. So, yeah.
So away from the vomit then.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of underlines other anxieties.
Yeah. I would probably say so. I think the other, I guess, mental health things that I deal with. So I have some like my ego is kind of rigged to fixate on like achievement and achieving things and looking good in front of people. When people admire me, that is basically the best thing. Like my brain is addicted to that. So like growing up, I don't know. I always had a lot of friends. I wanted to be liked by people. And so I would do a lot of mirroring, and I still do it accidentally. Like I just kind of match whoever I'm talking to. My brain sort of picks up like, you know, the things they might want me to say, or the attitude they might want me to have, like, and I'll sort of match that. So yeah, there's like some particular ego fixations of mine that are very unhealthy, and those have actually manifested themselves in some ugly ways during my career, and in life, but really heightened in my career. And they're just, you know, that's all added to the life's journey of things of, you know, areas I have to navigate. And I do a lot of self-reflection, thinking about the way I'm thinking and acting. And
out of interest, how do you kind of identify that you're mirroring, and what do you do to not do that?
Yeah, right. So I guess here's a good example. So like when I was younger, I guess like if you knew me when I was young and you knew me now, I've definitely changed a little bit. Like I used to be really, really outgoing, life of the party type, very funny. And sometimes I am that way, but
you're still funny, Caleb.
What's it? Oh, thank you, James Bros. But that used to be part of my like identity, I guess.
Yeah.
My dad was really funny. He loved when I was funny and would laugh at my jokes, and that, you know, was like a part of my identity. And over time, I got less like that. I don't know if this is answering the question, but so basically, when I was younger, I mirrored more. Like I was just more. I say mirrored. I don't think it's some like weird psychological like problem. I think a lot of people do it and don't even know it. But yeah, like if I was in a situation where, you know, maybe crude humor was the way of the party, like I would match that. Or if I, was in a group of, let's say like highly educated, proper people, I would become highly educated and proper, you know?
Did that ever affect you negatively? Did you make silly decisions?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I probably did stupid things to be liked like any kid, but I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, I guess the way that it manifested itself in my career is not as much of that like personality mirroring thing, but more the like wanting to be admired or respected, like anybody does. But at any job, like the people above me, I my subconscious would just like work really hard to be good and be the best and be respected and whatever. And
did that ever come across egotistical?
Oh, I don't think so. Because I think at the end of the day, like I think I'm a nuanced enough person that I can't really label any of these one things as the way I am, because I'm also like a team player, and I'm also like just generally, I do think I'm a good person. So I think people smell that. Like they don't think that I'm just being artificial. I guess what I'm saying is I think I'm a pretty real and honest person. So I don't think it ever came across as really egotistical, but definitely, you know what? Probably. I'm going to say yes.
But without it meaning to, or really being at kind of the extreme level that some people get to.
Yeah, right. I don't think I was ever the guy that people like didn't want to be around or thought was like a douchebag for, being, I don't know, for having a big head or something like that. I don't think that I ever wore that, but yeah. So I would want to be, I'm trying to think of the right word, but whatever, I would want to be respected or admired. And if that was withheld from me, my brain just would like break, it's like a vacuum that it would just draw towards, and, you'd want it more and more. And the more you want it, the more the person who detects you wanting it reserves it. And it's kind of an infinite loop.
Earlier, you mentioned having a lot of different passions. Do you find yourself fleeting between them a lot? Do you spend a little bit of time, like little and often, on them? Or do you like go really hard into it and then stop for ages? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah. Good question. It all depends on the thing. Yeah, like Laravel is kind of weird because it's stuck around for so long. It's actually just a passion of mine, and programming in general. But there's definitely things like circuitry is something I've always bounced in and out of, tinkering in that way, and trying to think of the other ones. There's a bunch, but music, piano, guitar is one that's stuck my entire life. But that goes in waves. It all goes in waves, but some of the things are steeper. Steeper waves. I definitely do have this warped timeline in my brain. My wife points this out all the time. That in my mind, I've been doing something forever. And it's really, it might be like 3 weeks. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so I say things like, I say honestly just wrong timelines, or I'll just exaggerate, and she'll be like, you just started this a week ago.
Yeah. My wife does the exact same thing. It sounds very similar to myself, that like development is the thing that stuck with me through my entire life. Mm-hmm. And I start many projects, and not just development projects, but like I built my desk, and I'm like, man, I could sell these desks. And then I start researching everything, and I put it all together. I'm like, yeah, this is how I'm going to do it. I'll set up a Shopify account, and then I just get bored and move on from it.
Yeah.
Do you think, like I only thought about this when I was looking through the form that you submitted, but do you think that we're both trying to just kind of fill a void that development gives you until you come off the computer and they're like, I need something that will keep me busy?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Are you saying that like what, like we're developing all day, and then when we're off the computer there's an emptiness and we need to that's probably true. The problem with when I get into these things, woodworking's a good example. That's definitely that's a perfect example, because that's something I'm not even interested in at all right now.
Right, okay.
But I have an entire garage full of tools and a half-finished teardrop camper, and I've gotten in every form of woodworking. I have all these carving tools and like basswood like hanging around my office, like right now, like carving knives and spoon carving, and I was into that for 10 minutes, or like whatever, 2 weeks, and thought I was going to be a spoon carver. That whole idea. So to answer your question about is it something to fill a void or something after a long day of development? Probably, but I think that the reason I question that is because when I'm into these things, I don't want to develop. Like, I don't want to be on the computer. I want to do that thing all day.
With the woodworking, you said that you surrounded yourself with like different kinds of wood, tools and everything. Do you think that maybe you overwhelmed yourself?
I guess the best example is, I definitely so this teardrop trailer, I was really excited about this idea of building. You know what a teardrop trailer is?
No, I'm going to Google it.
Yeah, it's like a little camper. They were popular in like the 60s or something. And you can tow it with a car, and its profile is a teardrop shape.
You've been making one of these?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty ambitious project, like from scratch, designing it all, like this whole, I had like Google SketchUp going.
Dude, that's like, how far have you got into this?
I'm not going to throw at you a percentage because it will certainly be wrong, because I thought I'd finish it in 3 months, and that did not happen. But I have the trailer, the base, the walls, and half the cabinets built, but there's still a lot more. But so anyhow, that's a great example of something that I went in like so hard, like full force. Every day I worked at Titan all day. And then as soon as I got off work at Titan, and I would wake up early so that I could get off early, and I would just start working on it until like nighttime, and then rinse and repeat over and over and over. And I loved it. I was in my glory, like sawdust everywhere. It was just great. But then, it just like fizzled out. Like it got cold. Yeah. And I bought a space heater that didn't work. I bought like a torpedo heater, whatever they call those. Mm-hmm. That wasn't enough. And then I guess what it was is something stalled me out. I mean, it's a perfect analogy for like every project, like anything that it sounds like you being a desk maker / salesman, like maybe it's a similar thing. And this is the teardrop is the biggest example of this in my life, but this happens on a small scale all the time. You're super ambitious. You have a big vision. This time you're going to do it. You go full force, throw everything at it. And then some hiccup happens. Something interrupts you. It's like going to the gym. People who go to the gym, anytime I go to the gym, I'm like, okay, every day, got to go to the gym. And I do for maybe a month. And then, you have to travel somewhere or something, or eating healthy. You fall off the wagon, and it's really hard to get to the finish line. Once it's not sexy anymore, it's just peters out, and then,
when it becomes a chore.
Exactly. And then I go, well, who was I doing this for? Myself. So if myself doesn't want to do it, then I try to follow through on things, but that is my life struggle for sure. No doubt.
Yeah. Especially when you start many things, like you get kind of bogged down in, but I've got this, and this that I could also be doing.
Yep.
You're an accomplished speaker, but yet you used to have a fear of public speaking. Why was that? And how did you overcome it?
I wouldn't call myself an accomplished speaker, but
I mean, you're very good at it.
Thank you for saying that.
I saw you at Full Stack Europe, and you were by far my favorite.
Wow. James Brooks.
I mean, take that how you want, but
well, I appreciate that. I guess, so I've been deathly afraid of public speaking forever, but there is a I want to also say that any time I've had a lot of opportunities to public speak because of being involved in like growing up in a church and church groups and summer camps and things. And I did music, so I like led worship and all this stuff for a long time. So I've had a lot of opportunities, and most of the time I will say that this is my disclaimers, that most of the time, even if I've been terrified, people say that I'm a natural. That's what people say. So I think I am generally, once I'm in that zone, I am like charismatic and appear to be comfortable, even if I'm extremely uncomfortable. So I'll say that I don't think everybody has that trait, and that I feel like just comes natural to me. That's just part of my predisposition, I guess. But
nerves are healthy, though.
No, yes, yeah. I was just
You
listening
don't want to be cocky, do you?
Right. In some way, Here's actually a good example of the one time I didn't have nerves. I was doing a Livewire meetup. So I put out on Twitter like, hey, if you want me to speak about Livewire at your meetup, book me. So I booked a bunch of these. And this one was a lot later than the rest. And I just reused what I'd been doing. But I didn't prepare really because I'd already done it a bunch. But like a month or two had gone by since I did the last one. And it wasn't that many people. And it barely even crossed my mind that I had it. It was just on my calendar. I didn't even care at all. And then I showed up to it and I started doing it and everything was going fine. And all of a sudden I hit some error and I couldn't figure out the error. And I ended up, oh man, this is like the dumbest thing ever. I typed nah. Nah is, for the listener, it's I guess sort of a oddly well-known alias in the Laravel community. Jeffrey Way gets credit for that. Basically it just resets your Git branch, your active branch. It puts you back to, whatever the last commit was, it resets the state to that. So I typed nah, and then everything broke. I've never had anything like everything broke. Like broke to the point where I was like, I am so sorry. I don't know what to do. Well, I guess I'll explain to you what I was going to do. It was one of the few times in my life that I've truly bombed, and that was a bomb experience where like
the pressure adds up though, doesn't it? And then you start worrying, and then you're not thinking straight. And
yes, in those moments, it's not good. Yeah. Not a recipe.
Danger with live coding.
Yes, it is. It totally is. Yeah. Oh, I don't even want to think about that. Like, what if that happened at Laracon? Ugh, that would be terrible. But anyway, most of the time I don't bomb, but that's a good example, like you said, of one where like nerves are good because when you have nerves, you prepare and you're kind of on it. Like gives you this adrenaline, this laser focus that I lacked in that moment. But early on, public speaking, I had a couple bombs. Like I was like a really, really young kid and was in a play. And I forgot I just blanked. I had one line. It was the Velveteen Rabbit play. I had one line and I just blanked. And I don't even know. It was one of my really, one of those early memories where everything around that time period is really fuzzy, except for that one traumatizing experience.
Yeah.
This is that. And I totally blanked and just stared at the audience. And I actually came up with something off the cuff, which was good, I guess. And then another time in high school, I was really intimidated by my classmates. I was new to the school, and we had to present some like book review or something. And I bombed. I was standing up there. My mouth got like sand dry. Like I could like choke on my mouth. It was so bad. And my leg was shaking. Like I couldn't stop my leg from shaking. It was actually shaking. It was terrifying. And it was horrible. And I'm like, and everybody knows it right now. And then I went back to my desk and was like, did that just happen? My life is over.
How old were you then?
13, 14, I don't know. It was not good.
Being able to move on from that is huge because like I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to do any public speaking just because of that one experience.
Yeah. I guess that's something that like, so the first Laracon I did was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Like the kind of thing where, like any of these, every time I public spoke for so long, it's like just the worst feeling in the pit of your stomach for months for me leading up to it. And then it gets worse and worse as you get closer and you just want relief so bad. And I would tell myself things like, the day after you will have done it and you will not have died. That's good news. You should be happy about that.
It's good that through that though that you would still submit a talk even though you know you're going to dread it until the day.
Yeah, so I guess that's the sort of that is something that I've definitely internalized is like if it scares the shit out of me, I have to do it, unfortunately.
It seems to me that you've got quite like a driven character. Like you quit your job, you are working on Livewire and Alpine pretty much full time, I'd say. And then you said earlier, before we started recording, that you've been up since 1 a.m.
That is true. Yeah.
What is it that drives you?
Yeah, I think probably two things. One is I love creating things. I love creating anything. And so I just want to do that all the time, and I want to make something better and better. And I feel like, so there are other reasons, but this reason, I think, like, there's this book that I picked up called The War of Art, and it sort of describes how, like, great art, I mean, this is stuff a lot of us know, but it does a good job of outlining. Like, great art is not, it doesn't come from inspiration. It's not a stroke of inspiration that pops into your head, or, it's not, it's something that you fight a war. Like, you are a professional artist. Like, you show up to the writing desk or the computer or whatever every day, and you put the grueling work in, and you fight the demons of, the war of art, the things that's tried to stop you from doing something great. And so for me, I feel like at the level that I'm at with Laravel, I'll just say Laravel in general, which I'm not going to judge what that level is. I'm just going to say that it's the highest level of anything in my life. Like, I'm pretty good at guitar, but I'm not that good, like but with Laravel, it's the one thing that I've been able to stick to long enough to get good enough where I can experience the spoils of being creative at a high level, Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think about this a lot. Like, I was driving this morning, and I forget what I was thinking about. It's probably music. I think about this with music a lot, where, I was listening to a Joe Rogan interviewing Bill Burr, and they're talking about drumming. And Bill Burr's talking about the greatest drummer in the world. And, that's probably a whole other psychological rut we could go down, of, like, me always just kind of being attracted to this idea of like greatness, I guess, which is totally egotistical, but this is just me being transparent. I just have always wanted that. So I hear that, and I'm like, oh, could I be the greatest? And in my brain, like, I'm actually drumming. This is hilarious. I'm like drumming in my brain when they're saying that. I'm like, yeah, I could see being that. But the problem is to get the mechanics, to get my hands, to be able to express that with my hands, like, well enough. Like, it would take so long, just so long. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. So anyway, I'm kind of going off here, but Laravel has shown me, like, I've witnessed the excellence at higher levels than anything else in my life. So I'm operating at this level that I really enjoy. But now I've seen, like, what it takes to do something great. And I don't think I've done, I don't want to sell myself short or over. I'll say that I see people who I think are great, and the things they do are great. And I now realize more than ever, because I think I'm closer than ever, I realize more than ever that it is so unbelievably hard, and you have to work at it so ridiculously hard.
And I think it helps when it's a passion, as like, it's not just your job to learn Laravel. Like, you enjoy it, you want to make things for yourself, you want to make things for other people outside of work, and you spend all of your time reading the documentation, playing with it, reading the code, and then you kind of look back one day and like, wow, I really know this thing. But then if you were to go back and total up all the hours that you spent on it, and not even just like actual physical working hours, but the hours that you're thinking about it, when you're falling asleep and you're like, what if like I was to do this? All of that time that you spend thinking about it, if you were to then go and apply that to something like the drums, like, that's a lot of commitment.
Yeah, right.
And then you kind of, like, especially when you're looking back in hindsight, you're like, man, I'm not putting that amount of hours into anything. Right. Aside from Twitter and Instagram, you totally quit social media. How long have you been unplugged, and how do you think that helps?
Oh, man, yeah. Social media is so unhealthy, and I realize it. Twitter's the one that I let happen, although it's gotten pretty bad, and we could talk about that. But Facebook, I realized, I don't know, like right out of high school or something. I just realized all of the bad it was doing for my brain, the constant comparison, all of those things, comparing myself to other people. Like, it's that self-feeding loop. Like, I would see other people's best selves because they put it forth on Facebook, and I would build them up, and they would start to intimidate me, or I would think my life's not as exotic. And then when I would do something exotic in my life, I would feel like, oh man, like this is great. I have to put this on Facebook so that people see how exotic I am or how like interesting my life. And I guess I just realized, I was like, oh man, that's so unhealthy. So I just dropped Facebook and haven't picked it up since, and don't regret it at all. I miss out on things, you know, people expect that I'm cued in on things that I'm not, but it's so worth it. But honestly, like, I'm acting all high and mighty with my ability to shed the unhealth of social media, but I do the same thing with Twitter. I mean, if it's probably worse, but yeah, I just kind of had one of those moments of, one, recognizing what a just productivity suck it is, like seriously. And I was afraid that if I wasn't keeping tabs on, like, my finger on the pulse of the Laravel community, but also the larger tech community, that I would miss out, and I would, you know, people would be discovering things and would get ahead of me, or I just wouldn't, I wouldn't be cued in on things. Like, Twitter has been a superpower for me. So I was like, oh, am I gonna fall behind now because I don't know the latest hotness? But I don't know, I just went, well, I can just follow people again, but I think I need a reset. But I am a huge believer, I don't practice this all the time, but I think this is the most powerful way to basically solve your problems. For me, like mental problem type stuff, so this is relevant, is changing your environment. You know, this is said in tons of different ways in books and whatever, philosophy, but man, like, discipline's too hard. If you change your environment, you know, like, if you're like, smoking is a good one because it's definitely something that I've like wrestled with in my life, and it's much harder to quit smoking when people around you, when your friends smoke and you hang out with them every day. But if you murder all your friends who smoke, then it's not an issue at all, you know?
Drastic, but yeah, true.
I was hoping you'd pick up on that and not think I'm a serial killer.
I don't know. I'm slowly backing away from the computer now.
Yeah, right. So yeah, so the Twitter thing, that's a great way of like, okay, I can. It's leverage basically. It's like I could try to unscrew this screw or take this lug nut off my car with a tiny socket wrench, or I could use a breaker bar. And it's really easy just because the handle's longer. And that's what it is for me. Is like, okay, I could fight these mental battles. And so transparency, a lot of the mental battles are the same thing with Facebook. People post cool stuff all the time on Twitter. I do it. That's all I do on Twitter. Mostly what I do. I feed the fire. But honestly, I can't handle it. Sometimes I can, but sometimes I can't. And I recognize myself when I go, oh, like this person, they're just better than me, or like stuff like that. It's so bad. And I recognize that, and I want to be better. I want to not feel that way. I want to not have those negative emotions. But in that moment, I went, you know what? It's time to change my environment. There's one way I know I cannot feel those emotions. Put the blinders on. So silence.
It's like an easy solution, but it takes quite a big step to make.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking about social media, you recently tweeted about leaving Titan and how you walked away from a job that paid $85,000 a year. Mm-hmm. I imagine lots of people stay at their jobs for the money, even when they're unhappy and don't enjoy the work. What advice do you have for those people?
With anything like this, I run the risk of not understanding everybody's scenario. So just,
of course, yeah. Disclaimer,
disclaimed. I say leave it, especially if you're in tech. There's so many jobs. If it's not working where you're at, leave, go find a place that it works. And if jobs don't work, don't do them. That's fine. It's not like you have, that's something I had to sort of realize is like, I don't have to be someone who's good at working for someone else for 40 hours a week and dealing with like company politics and all the right things to do and say and all that stuff. Like, nah, if it's not working, punt on it. And you'll be surprised. There's this, you watch Mad Men?
I haven't.
Oh man.
No.
Mad Men's so good. I'll just say it's basically a story about a guy who left a certain life and became a new person, basically. Spoiler alert. It's like the 5th episode you learn that. Sorry. I didn't actually reveal what it is, though. So he's basically starts a new life per se. And then like later on the show, like the whole show is basically about him dealing with that. And someone else in the show does a pretty bad thing for the time period. I'm not saying it's a bad thing in general, because for people who know, oh my gosh. Okay, anyway, does a bad thing, and he's in the hospital. He's sitting next to her. She thinks that she's like, has to do something, and he basically tells her to just walk away from it. And he looks at her and he said, "You won't believe how quickly you can move on." Something like that. It was just some anti-hero quote of like, him identifying with that. Anyway, that's what I want to say is like, you think it's a big deal and then you make the decision, and oh man, perspective in life and all those things are so relative, and you forget that. And then when your context changes, it's like, it's crazy. You think you're going to miss all your coworkers, and maybe that's true. And I do miss everybody at Titan, actually. They're all phenomenal people, but I don't actually miss them on the day to day. I thought that, I would suffer some loss. I suffered no loss. Yeah. So to the listener, if you're in a bad situation or just an unideal situation for your lifestyle or type of personality or happiness or anything, and it's money, I would encourage you to, well, if you need money, you need money, and that's admirable. But I don't know. I would encourage you to consider it. Yeah. Right. Yep.
What makes you, Caleb, a happy dev?
What makes me a happy dev? This is the kind of thing I need like a month to think about. Let me just Laravel makes me a happy dev. What makes me a happy dev? Declarative code, polymorphic code, okay, here's something that makes me a happy dev. Killing a conditional. That's what I'm going to say. And zero configuration, making something feel like magic.
Like Livewire.
Like Livewire, yeah. Yep. I like things
magic.
that feel like magic. And not the bad kind. The good kind where you go, ooh.
Like Laravel. Laravel even. Oh, my words just merged into one then. Cool. Well, that, Caleb, brings us to the end of the episode.
Great. Thank you for... Not great. Oh, great. We're finally here.
Great. We're at the end.
No, this is
nice.
This has been great. I appreciate you having me, making a space for people to talk about these types of things transparently. It's noble. You're a great interviewer. I enjoyed my session.
Thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate you coming on and talking about it, and even opening up about a phobia that genuinely has hindered your life.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
This is goodbye.
This is goodbye.
And that brings us to the end of the second episode of 2020. A huge thank you to Caleb for spending the time talking to me. You may have noticed the new artwork. So I just want to say thank you to Kaneko for designing that. I really appreciate it. You've done a fantastic job. We're now accepting sponsorship for this podcast on our Patreon page. So a quick shout out to our monthly sponsors, Justin Jackson and Rob from 64 Robots. Also, thank you to the PHP Town Hall for sponsoring this episode. I will leave a link to the Patreon page in the show notes. For now, goodbye.